भगवता नारायण स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथिताम पुराण मुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम अद्वैतमृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनी अहं त्वामनुसन्धामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी नमो अस्तु ते व्यास विशाल बुद्धे कुल अरविंद आयतन नेत्र येन तव्या भारत तैलपूर्णः प्रज्वलितो ज्ञानमय प्रदीपः प्रपान पारिजाताय तोत्र वेत्र एकपानये ज्ञान मुद्राय कृष्णाय गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोक्ता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत् वसुदेव वसुतम देवम कंस चानूरमर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगद्गुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथ जला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्ये ग्राहवती कृपेन वहने कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोर मकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तने सोतीर्णा खलु पांडवै रणनदी कवर्तका केशवा पाराशरे वत्सरो जमलम गीता अर्थगंधोटकम नानाख्यानक केसरम हरिकथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोके सज्जन षटपद रह हे पिये मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल पट्वंसी न श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानंद माधवम् यं ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्ये स्तवे वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रम उपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगा ध्यानवस्थित तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्य अन्तं न विदुः असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः। In this class we are studying chapter 13. In fact, we are towards the end of this chapter. The name of this chapter is Kshetra Kshetrajya Vibhag Yoga. So, number 30, that's where we're going to start today. Prakritiha ev cha karmani kriye manani sarvasha ya pashyati tatha atmanam akartaram sapashyati. Prakritiya, by Prakriti. Ev means alone. Cha means and. Karmani, actions. Karam. Kriye manani, beyond or like a being performed. Kriye manani, being performed, like an action being performed. Sarvasha, all. Ya means who, pashyati, sees. Tatha, also. Atmanam, the self. Akartaram, actionless. Sapashyati, he sees. He sees, who sees, that all actions are performed by Prakriti alone. And that the self is actionless. So the fundamental of this Vedic philosophy is further cleared for us. So who does the actions? Prakriti does. Not the soul, not the God. There are only three things over here. Prakriti, Purush, and Parmeshwar. Only three things, three P's. So Purush, which is the Atma or the soul, and Parmeshwar, who is the God, does not do anything. It's actionless. All the actions are done by Prakriti. Okay? So to understand it clearly, what is Prakriti? Prakriti is anything other than Atma and Paramatma, other than Purush and Parmeshwar. Everything. Now we can just think about it. What is other than God and soul? In our own body, other than the soul, which is part of God, what is? Everything else. It's the body also, it's the mind also, it's the intellect also, it's the ego also. It's everything other than the soul. And that's what does the actions. So he says, who knows it? See, he sees who sees. Sees means who really knows it. Only that person really see that self is actionless. So Prakriti alone performs the actions. But it performs the actions in the presence of the soul though. Okay, so that energy has to be there for the Prakriti to function. Electricity has to go through the wire for the fan to move or the bulb to light. So the same way in this body also, body can talk or walk or move only when the soul is connected with it. But the real action is done by the Prakriti alone. So in the presence of the spirit, the equipments function. So Prakriti you can understand as equipment or as upadhis. These were the questions asked by Arjuna. So that's why Lord Krishna again and again for our clarification keep on going through it. So self is actionless, not acting. It's perfect. There's no desire in it. Because where does the desire come from? The mind. And what is mind? Part of Prakriti. So where the desires are not, there cannot be any action. Actions are impossible. So he who is capable of recognizing this is what Pashyati means, capable of recognizing and realizing that the self in him is ever actionless, is alone the right perceiver. Who is recognizing and experiencing the imperishable in the middle of the perishable. So it's like a wedding of both matter and the energy, Atma and the Paramatma and the Prakriti. It is like a wedding. When we see it clearly, only then we really see it. So that's why when Shri Ram asked his Guru about all of this, because he was being asked to go with Rishi Vishwamitra at a young age of 16 to do a big task. So Rishi Vishishta said, remember Ram, karta bahir karta antar loke vihar raghav. He said, Ram, while working externally, exert yourself. It's not that thinking that Prakriti does, I don't do it, I'm not going to do my job. No, still you got to exert. So while working externally, exert yourself as if results depend upon you. But internally realize yourself to be the non-doer. So in other words, keep an eye on the real you also, who's not doing anything, but to do the actions so skillfully, so beautifully. That's why the definition, one of the definition according to Lord Krishna of yoga is yogaha karmasu kaushlam. Do it skillfully. And that's what Rishi Vashishta told Shri Ram also. Exert yourself, do your best. यदा भूत पृथक भावम एक स्थम अनुपश्यति तथा एव च विस्तारम ब्रह्म संपद्यते तदा. Yada means when, bhut prithak bhavam, the whole variety of beings, ek stham, resting in one, anupashyati, sees. Tata means from that, ev means alone, cha means and, vistaram, the spreading, brahm, sampadyate, he becomes, tada means then. When he sees, he means the person, the yogi, he sees the whole variety of beings as resting in the one and spreading forth from that one alone. He then becomes Brahman. This is the goal. We have to become Brahma because we are part of Brahma. So that's why he says to know that the self is the ultimate truth behind the names and the forms is only a partial knowledge. Definitely we need to know that, but that's partial. But for the complete understanding of life, when we at once understand how from the self, the endless multitude of names and forms rise up and spread become the universe. So that means no matter what we see, any kind of a form, any kind of a name, it all has come from that one Brahman. So when you experience this, when you see this, then you have become one. And there's no doubt about it. A person with the right understanding can recognize this, the right understanding. And it all starts from an intellectual study first. And that's what we are trying to do. Intellectually, we are trying to understand, then it happens with the practice experientially. That the numerous forms of life in existence, from the tiniest amoeba to the most powerful celestial gods, that's what it really means. Bhut prithak bhavam. The whole variety. All of them are rooted in the same reality. The soul, which is a part of God. Seated in a body, which is made from the material energy. So body is made out of material energy. Prakriti. So he who is recognizing this one homogeneous self, he who is experiencing that in him also is the one, it is one with the same homogeneous mass, truly becomes Brahman. That's what that popular saying, Aham Brahmasmi, from this kind of experience. This is called true wisdom. This is called the right perception. So when we see the variety of living beings all rooted in the same material nature, or in simpler words, the unity in this diversity, when it's realized, when we see the same spiritual substratum for everybody. I mean, you can imagine that what kind of a peace you'll feel. No fear. So fear is always from somebody other than me. From ourselves, we are not afraid. Other than us. So when we see that everybody is one, substratum is one, what is there to be afraid of? So unity in the diversity. This leads to Brahma realization. Okay? Anaditvat nirguntvat paramatma ayam avya sharirastha api konte na kroti na lipyate. Anaditvat, being without beginning. Nirguntvat, being devoid of qualities. Devoid of qualities means beyond satvikta, rajsikta, tamsikta. Nirgun. Paramatma, the Supreme Self. I am this aware, imperishable. Sharirastha, dwelling in this body. Api means even, also. Kauntya, that is Arjuna. Na karoti, not acts. Na lipyate, not tainted. Being without beginning and being devoid of qualities, the Supreme Self, the imperishable, though dwelling in the body. O Kaunteya, neither acts nor is tainted. Tainted means any flaw, any change. So this God, which we call God, absolute, is situated within the heart of living beings as the Supreme Soul. Never identifies with the body. Because the minute we start to identify with the body, then we are going through the gunas. Then we are going through the beginning and the end also. But when we understand we are the Atma, then without beginning, without any qualities, never identifies with the body nor is affected by its states of existence. See, those states of existence, they are part of the physical body, the material nature. When we talk about birth, growth, decay, death, that's all for the Prakriti, not for the soul. So his presence in the material body does not make him material. So soul present in the body does not make it material in any way, nor is it subject to the law of karma. Who is subject to law of karma? Prakriti is. The whole law of karma is about the Prakriti, not for the soul. This cycle of birth, death, these are all which we see. It's only for the Prakriti part. Okay? So when we read like this, having no beginning, automatically we think, no, we were born. Our birth was such and such date. But no beginning really, if you look at it philosophically, it means there's no cause. No cause. That from which everything comes, that is the truth. It is uncaused for all that has been created. But something which undergoes the change, there has to be a cause for it. So cause and effect, that's why cause and effect is the law of karma. That is related to the Prakriti part of us, not the soul. So knowing this clearly, distinctly is very important. So quality, we already talked about having no quality. So qualities are, they belong to the Prakriti, not to the Atma. And the imperishable. Something which doesn't change, it is definitely imperishable. There's no change. Change is the one which causes the perishing. So it's imperishable. No change at all. Because there's no quality, there's no change. See, change from the tamasic to the rajasic to the sattvic, that is the change. But there's no change in the Atma. So therefore, the beginningless, the qualityless, the imperishable Supreme Self, though living in the physical body or the physical structure. It thrills the matter envelopment, but does not in itself and by itself act. This is the philosophy. This is the fundamental truth of Bhagavad Gita. Soul doesn't act, it doesn't change. It was never born and it never dies. And the minute we start to identify with the soul, we feel the peace. We feel the oneness. Because at the soul level, we are not different. We are all one. Yatha sarvagatam sokshmayat akasham na uplipyate sarvatra avasthita dehe tatha atma na uplipyate. Yatha means as sarvagatam, all pervading. Sokshamyat, because of its sukshamta, subtlety. Akasham, ether, the space. Na uplipyate, not tainted. Sarvatra, everywhere. Avasthita, seated. Dehe, in the body. Tatha means so. Atma, the self. Na uplipyate, not tainted. As the all-pervading space or the ether is not tainted because of its subtlety, so too the self seated everywhere in the body is not tainted. Because self is even subtler than the Akash. So he is giving us a little example over here, analogy, that subtler cannot be flawed by the grosser. Akash being the subtlest of these five elements, it cannot get flawed. No matter what kind of a storm we see outside, when it's gone, it's again clear. It cannot flaw. So he says it's all pervading Akash. So a subtler thing cannot be conditioned by a grosser factor. So self being the subtlest, the soul experiences. See, we do experience the sleep. See, outside in these elemental forces, we see different changes. But what happens inside here? We got to go within ourselves. So sleep, wakefulness, tiredness, refreshment, etc. Due to the ego, we identify with it. That I'm feeling tired. I am happy today. I am sad today. I feel fulfilled. Who is holding it all? See, just like Akash, the space is holding everything. All of these changes are being held by the soul because it's subtler than all those experiences. So the subtlest does not get affected. Soul does not feel tired. Soul does not sleep. Soul does not get deluded. We cannot refresh the soul because it cannot be changed. It is divine, that energy. It is subtler than any grosser feeling. It retains its divinity because it's divine. It's part of God. It retains its divinity even while it identifies with the material body. It resides in the material body, but still it's pristine. So then what exactly is the soul's function in the body? If it doesn't act, if it doesn't change, it doesn't get tainted, what does it do? Yatha prakashyati ekaha kritsnam lokam imam ravi kshetram kshetri tatha krishnam prakashyati bharat. Yatha means as. Prakashyati illumines. Ekaha one. Kritsnam the whole. WHOLE. Lokam world. Imam this. Ravi means sun. Kshetram the field. Kshetri the lord of the field. Tatha means also Kritsanam, the whole, W-H-O-L-E. Prakashyati illumines, Bharat is or Arjuna. Just as the one sun illumines the whole world, so also the Lord of the field, Paramatma, illumines the whole field, O Bharat. So this is the purpose of this soul. Purpose of that sun is to illuminate the earth and the other planets around it. The purpose of this Atma is to illuminate this field, this Kshetra. It's the most striking example in our scriptural literature. The sun. Under this sun, there are saints also, there are sinners also. There are robbers also, there are divine beings also. Sun illuminates or illumines the same way to everybody. Does not distinguishes. It does not say, I am going to give more light to the saints and less to the sinners. The same way this Atma sitting over here does the same thing. Does not get affected. Whether we are helping somebody or we are hurting somebody. It's just only giving the light. That is its job. So just like a sun's job is to illuminate this world, soul's job is to illuminate this field. That's why I always tell you, the whole yoga sadhana is about the mind. Keep this mind pure, keep this mind restful, keep this mind in your control. Because through the mind, you'll be creating the karmas. And those karmas affect our prakriti. Purush is always the same. There's no yoga for the Purush, for the soul. Soul is always there. So in the world, there's only one sun, which illumines everything, good, bad, vicious, virtuous, ugly, beautiful, whatever we see. So the same way the soul, although seated in the heart, spreads its consciousness throughout the field of the body. Whether it's the head or the toes or the toenails, everything in us gets the energy from that same one soul, spirit, which never gets contaminated by the sins of the mind, by the perversions of the intellect, or by the crimes of the physical body. It only illumines. Okay? So the illumination of the self in our mind, the thoughts are emerging. Emotions we feel. With our ever-changing behaviors. When we are happy also, the light is being given by the soul. When we are sad also, the light is being given by the soul. When we tell somebody that I love you, the energy is given by soul. When we tell somebody I cannot stand you, still the energy is coming from there. The person who understands this experiences it. Lord Krishna says, truly sees, sapashyati. The last verse of this great chapter, because to me, I think this is the most brilliant chapter in Bhagavad Gita. Where Lord Krishna himself dissected this deep philosophy for us, with such a great patience, and with so many beautiful examples. So that's why this is the most brilliant chapter. It gives us the direct subjective method of meditating and realizing the imperishable, the eternal. Because normally we don't know what to meditate upon. We stay confused. But over here, he did not leave any doubt at all. Everything is crystal clear in this chapter. So in the last verse, he says, Kshetar kshetragyo evam antram jnana chakshusha bhut prakriti moksham cha ye vidu yanti te parama. Kshetar kshetragyo, between the field and the knower of the field. Evam means thus, antram, distinction or difference. Jnana chakshusha, by the eye of wisdom. Bhut prakritim moksham. Bhut means the living entity. So the liberation from the prakriti of the being. Bhut prakritim moksham. Cha means and, ye means who, vidu means know, K-N-O-W. Yanti, go, te means they, param, the supreme. They who, with their eye of wisdom, come to know the distinction between the field and the knower of the field, Kshetar and the Kshetragya, and of the liberation from the prakriti of the being. What happens to them? They go to the Supreme. So we need liberation from the prakriti. We need the liberation from the field. But we can work on this liberation only if we know the distinction. So that's why he said, they who with their eye of wisdom, Gyan Chakshu. See, this knowledge which we are cultivating, this is not just to become a scholar. This knowledge, ultimately, it got to translate into the experience. And that's what the Gyan is. Gyan Chakshu. At the level of the scholars, we can debate and we can argue and we can just become arrogant. But the minute we become Jnani, we see that everybody is the same. So this is what the Gyan Chakshu is talking about. So after explaining in detail, so at the end, he's telling us to experience this. So Lord Krishna is directly advocating that our life as a human being will be fulfilled only when we discriminate or discern between the field and the knower of the field, and successfully when we can meditate upon this. Meditate. And ultimately, after meditation, we got to realize, and when we are working in this outer world, at that time, look at it. What's really happening? Instead of looking around everybody else, wasting time and energy into the others' minds and others' behavior, we got to look at our own behavior, our own constitution, our own relationship among the field and the knower of the field. In that sense, the gurus, they say when you walk, my Guruji used to say, and he used to repeat his Guru's word, and his Guru used to repeat his Guru's word, and that's what I'm going to relate to you. In Hindi, he used to say, जब चलो तो आंखें नीचे करके चलो. Keep your eyes to yourself. Because when we are looking around everywhere, what are we doing? We are not focusing on ourselves, what we are supposed to do. The whole journey is about ourselves. So that's why our own behavior, आंखें नीचे करके चलने का मतलब अपना देखो. Are we following what we are studying? Or are we just dissecting everybody else's behavior? And that's why the next chapter, this is the end of this chapter, the next chapter is about how to really dissect our own prakriti. Our mind also, our intellect also, our ego also. Focus on ourselves. Wherever we need to change, we should change. So this is a very customary style of Lord Krishna. In every chapter he has done it. He winds up the topic of the topic and then connects it with the next topic. So in this verse also, it's like a connecting a verse for the next chapter. So he says, field and the knower of the field. And he is just summing it up. And he says the true knowledge is to know the distinction between the kshetra and the kshetrajna. Field and the knower of the field. And he says you can do it with a combination of a fully developed heart and head. That's why Gyan Chakshu. Heart is given to us, head is given to us. So we need to learn how to use it properly. So the faculty that comes to experience this divine infinitude, and often in English we call it intuition. So this Gyan Chakshu, if you want to really translate into the English language, it's a intuition. The Gyan Chakshu. So raise your intellect to that level where it's becoming purer and purer and purer. Gyan Chakshu. So he says, they who realize and perceive the nature and the essential distinction between the field and the knower of the field and the supreme. Supreme means the God. So Prakriti, Purush and Parmeshwar. These three P's, they come to experience the non-existence of the Prakriti or the temporariness of the Prakriti. And they know that who we are. See, when we don't apprehend it properly, when the clarity is not there, that gives us the misapprehension. So non-apprehension of reality gives rise to misapprehension of it. So that's why this knowledge is needed to apprehend it. So this is the last verse of this chapter. So anybody, any question? We have 5 minutes and to finish this 45 minutes segment. But if you have a question, you can ask. And then after that, I will ask Urmilji to recite this chapter, which she has beautifully written in poetry for us also. But if you want to ask a question before that, you can, because instead of starting the new chapter, now we'll start the next chapter.
Kim has a question. Hershey, Kim.
Sure, Kim.
Thank you. That was a wonderful class. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused about the soul and the consciousness. I think in one of the verses it was the soul illumines the field with the light of consciousness, but is that the same as the word for consciousness we use today that's referring to the mind? And I mean, maybe if you could just explain more.
Yeah, consciousness is a very weak term to define soul. Okay, so soul is part of God. It does not change. When we use the word consciousness, we can say less conscious and more conscious. So how can that be soul? If somebody says consciousness means the divine light, then I can say, okay, all right. So it all depends where you are using it, how you are using it, why you are using that consciousness word. It can mean as a soul also, but it's in the mind of the person who's using that term. Okay?
Yes.
So
Yes.
soul is, just remember, soul is a part of God.
Mhm.
It will never die, it was never born. It just is. That's why I said there was no cause for it. There's no cause. There's no cause and effect of the soul. Soul just is. Okay, so consciousness word, if somebody wants to use the word consciousness for soul, go ahead, but understanding has to be there.
Yes.
So this consciousness is the same everywhere in everybody. Okay, so English translation, I stay away from that word consciousness personally, because that throws people off.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Anyway, the point is that we need to know the distinction. By doing sadhana, we can know the difference, right? Just by
Do the sadhana, study, contemplate, try to understand. Yes, definitely. Okay, but the basic principles which we have been studying in this chapter is that there are only three things:
Yes.
supreme, soul, and the prakriti, the nature. Changes are always in the nature, prakriti, not in the soul and the super soul. Okay, so this is the main thing, and we need to, the more we practice, more we first understand, then meditate and practice, and then have a subjective experience, the more clarity it will be.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Sujata?
Something, a couple of things, just as a follow-up to that. I think that what the layperson refers to as consciousness actually implies the waking, dreaming, and sleep states, while the fourth state, the witness state that we refer to, is what I understand as the soul state. I mean, and as a result, everything that we do is the work that we do to liberate ourselves from desires and everything happens in the three states of waking, sleeping, dreaming. That's the way I understand it.
Yeah, because that's where the changes are.
That's where the
That's
changes
where
are.
the actions are happening. That's where the karmas are.
Right.
There are no karmas in the fourth state.
In the fourth state. So
because that is a knowing who you are. Okay, when you know who you are, there's no karma.
right. And therefore the whole of, we have to work with our material body to achieve the state of freedom.
Yeah, we got to work on the prakriti part of us.
Yes.
But at the same time, while we are working, keep an eye on the self also.
Right.
Ordinarily, what happens, we are working on the prakriti part and we lose sight of ourselves. That's where we just keep on going deeper and deeper into the prakriti. That's why Rishi Vashisht, I mentioned that verse to you. He said, Raghav, make sure that you remember who you are always. But outside, do your best, what you need to do. See, the problem is we forget who we are. So we got to remember it more and more, who we are, while doing what we need to do. Okay? So stay alert about this. And so that's why I said this is the most brilliant chapter actually. If you did not understand it, I would say read again and again and again. If you understand this chapter, rest of the Bhagavad Gita will be very easy for you to understand. Okay.
One more comment. I was going to say that in one of the previous readings, you explained to us that the difference between Jivatma and what you call the soul.
Atma.
From Atma.
Atma.
Right.
Yeah.
And because at the level of Jivatma, we are still connected to this phenomenal part of ourselves.
Yeah. As a Jivatma, we forget who we are.
Right.
That's called a individualized soul.
Right.
As a Jivatma, we say that my soul and your soul, or my body and your body. As a Jivatma, because of the Jivatma, we just keep on taking births. The person who is Jivan Mukta, he has a body also. He has a mind and intellect also, but never forgets that I am the Atma. It's not that if we have a body and it's okay to forget. No, we got to raise ourselves to that level while living in this body, while doing our duties, become free. Jivan Mukta. Free is like a liberated while living.
You said once before that the Jivatma, the seat of the Jivatma is the ego.
Definitely. Individualization is the ego. I am the body. I am my objects. I am where I was born. Identification with the lower I is the Jivatma.
Gotcha.
And identification with the bigger I, that is a Aham Brahmasmi. Okay. So majority of us, we have started the journey as a Jivatma. But the closer we get towards the understanding that I am the Shuddha Buddha Atma, the lighter we will feel. Even while living, there are days when you feel very light. Because a little glimpse of that reality is there. We can fluctuate between these right now. But more and more, if we pay attention to it, with the help of the sadhana, we just have more and more awareness that I am the Shuddha Buddha Atma. And then ultimately he said, when you see everybody else is part of that too, it's not just only you. That is half of the journey. The full journey is then it's the whole thing emanate from the same truth. No labels, no prejudices, no me and mine. Okay. So if nobody has a question, I'll request Urmilji to recite that chapter 13, the poetry she has written beautifully.
Thank you, Harji, for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, thank you for creating it for us. Yeah.
I'm still working on it. Bhagavad Gita, Discourse 13, verses 1 to 35. Kshetra Kshetragna Vibhag Yog. The distinction between the field and its knower, or the distinction between the creation and the creator. Arjuna asks Lord Krishna, and this is question number 13 of the 16 questions that Arjuna asks Lord Krishna. What is Prakriti, the material nature? And what is Purush, the spirit? What is Kshetra, the field? Who is the knower of the field, Kshetragna? And what is Gyan, knowledge, its object and its goal? Lots of questions, of course, but Lord Krishna, with patience, replied to each of the questions Arjuna asked. He starts by saying that Prakriti is the human body, and that human body is like a mini universe. It is the field of all activities and is termed Kshetra. as per the wise sages, the one who knows the field of the body and all its facets is Kshetrajna. O Arjuna, know that I am also the knower of the field of activities of every individual soul. I would repeat this line. He says, and this is Lord Krishna saying, that I am also the knower of the field of activities of every individual soul. True knowledge is to identify the Kshetra, its knower Kshetrajna, and the Supreme Soul. I will further explain the field of activities, its properties, and how the changes occur within it. I will also tell you from what it was created, who that creator is, and the powers it can emit. Eminent sages chanted many hymns about what truly is the field and the knower of the field. The Vedas and the Brahma Sutras affirmed these hymns with deduction well proven indeed. Kshetra, the field of activities, and now we talk of its attributes and modifications. Lord Krishna says the entire field of activity has 5 gross elements: the ego, the intellect, the material energy, 5 working senses, 5 knowledge senses, the mind, and 5 objects of the senses very subtly. Desire and aversion, happiness and misery, consciousness and will are the modifications. The field encompasses these modifications, and the body also endures transformations. Though it is not mentioned in verse 7, the transformations, in the footnote, I have written what these transformations are. The Kshetrajna, now let's talk about Kshetrajna, but before we do that, Lord Krishna wants us to know the virtues, behaviors, and attitudes essential to purify the mind and the heart, and then only you will understand what is Kshetrajna. These virtues are, and I'll go fast with this because you know what they are: humbleness, freedom from hypocrisy, non-violence and forgiveness, uprightness, service of the Guru, cleanliness of the body and mind, and steadfastness. Also, virtues like self-control, dispassion for sense objects, and the I, me, and mine elimination. As for pain and grief, innate in birth, old age, disease, and death, have a mindful reflection. Cultivate non-attachment, have less involvement with spouse, family, home, clan, and society. Have evenness of mind, stay composed in both the desired and the undesired life's activity. With wholehearted discipline, worship me with exclusive devotion that is never wavering. Elect a pleasant solitary place for meditating, have a distaste for petty gossip and grouping. Constantly gain spiritual knowledge, reflect on this absolute truth, and apply its importance. Such virtues and traits is what I declare to be true knowledge. Opposite of them is ignorance. Now he talks about Brahman. And Brahman, he also says, is a supreme entity subordinate to me. That we will discuss later. He said to Arjuna, I now reveal to you about Brahman, the ultimate reality, knowing which immortality one attains. Know that Brahman is beginningless, neither being nor not being. Beyond both he remains. Brahman has divine hands, feet, eyes, heads, mouth, and ears in all places. He is everywhere. And the key word here is divine hands, feet, eyes, head. Brahman pervades the universe. He can hear, smell, and see everything that exists out there. Brahman can perceive the sense objects, even though he is devoid of all the worldly senses. He sustains all creation, yet is detached from it. He has no traits, yet in all gunas he rejoices. Brahman also has some contradictory attributes. Contradictory means opposite qualities simultaneously. Brahman exists inside and outside all living beings. He can move and he can also not turn over. He is so subtle that the mind, senses, and intellect cannot fathom him. He is far and he is near. Brahman is the supreme entity, the creator, maintainer, and the destroyer of all beings. He is a unified whole, one supreme reality, yet he seems divided among all living beings. Brahman is a source of light for all things luminous. He is above the darkness of ignorance. He is true knowledge, object and goal of knowledge. He lives in the hearts of all existence. I have now made clear, says Lord Krishna, I have made clear the nature of the field, knowledge, its meaning, and its object, which is God. Only my exclusive devotees can grasp this information and attain the divine nature of me, the Lord. Distinct features of Prakriti, Purush, and Paramatma. Now he shifts to talking about nature, the individual soul, which have existed eternally. The material energy influences the gunas and produces constant modifications in the body. Prakriti, also called material energies, accountable for cause and effect in all existence. Based on past karmas, Purush. And who is the Purush? The individual soul in the heart creates joy and misery experience. When the individual soul is seated in material nature, it wishes to enjoy the modes of nature. This soul then bonds with Prakriti, determining its future births in wombs, superior or inferior. In the body also dwells the Supreme Lord as an observer, a sanction giver, and a supporter. He is also the divine enjoyer, the ultimate controller, and the supreme soul cited Paramatma. Thus, those knowing the truth about Paramatma, who is the supreme soul, Purush, the individual soul, and Prakriti, the nature, and also knows all about gunas and how they are related, they will not be born again. And no matter what their present condition, they will be liberated. Now, how will all this happen? We wonder, we learned about the Prakriti and the individual soul, but how do we perceive the Supreme Soul? And Lord Krishna says it can happen with various kinds of spiritual practices. Aspirants perceive the Supreme Soul inside the heart based on their mental disposition. Some cultivate knowledge with faith, others try meditation, and some opt for selfless action. Many are oblivious of the spiritual paths, steeped in ignorance, they never get educated. But if by chance they hear from saints and worship God with faith, they too can get liberated. Any forms of life, moving or not, that exists is a combination of Kshetra and Kshetragna. O Arjuna, know this relation between the field of activities and the knower of the arena. They truly see who envision the Supreme Soul residing along with the individual soul in all. I repeat, they truly see who envision the Supreme Soul residing along with the individual soul in all, and that both the Supreme Soul and the individual soul are immortal, seated in a body that is mortal. So those who can see the Supreme Soul as omnipresent and in all beings equally existing, with intellect elevated and the mind detached from Maya, they succeed in God attaining. The enlightened ones now realize that all the actions of the body stem from material nature, they grasp the power of material energy and see that the embodied soul is not the doer. When they see a variety of living entities born from the same material nature to all common, convinced that the source of all beings is the same material energy, they realize one and only Brahman. The Supreme Soul is imperishable, with no beginning, no end, and no material qualities. Even if it lives in the body, unlike the soul, it is not affected by material energies. All pervading space holds everything in it, but being subtle, those things do not taint it. Similarly, though the Supreme Soul permeates the body, its divinity is not stained by it. Just like the sun is sighted in one place to illuminate the whole solar system with its energy, so does the individual soul seated in the heart spreads its energy to the entire body. And Lord Krishna concluded as always, those with the eyes of knowledge, wisdom and intuition, they can differentiate the Kshetra and Kshetragna. They unleash from material nature, chart a spiritual path, and attain the goal of nirvana.
Thank you, Urmil. Thank you very much. So,
You need to read it again and again.
yes, definitely.
Then,
Definitely. Pretty deep philosophy as we all know it. So, but ultimately we got to see the essence of it and start practicing. So many, if you can just for a couple of minutes do the chanting, play that, and we can meditate. And then we'll end the class after that.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hello, brother. Okay. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Manny.